what I've sort of realized in recent years is that probably the biggest game changer in almost anything that we do outside of our work in terms of the impact it has on all of the other areas of our life. The biggest driver, I think, is sleep. And if you think about it, sleep is just like incredibly important because it's actually more important. If you, other than oxygen, if you are sleep deprived, you die quicker than you are if you're food deprived. So you actually potentially die quicker from yeah. So I suppose water probably not. Probably water would and definitely oxygen. But other than that, you actually die pretty quickly if you don't sleep, which indicates that it's pretty important. And that's why I think it's really worth spending a bit of time on. And not just for you guys, because I know we've talked about it. I know, Tina, you're we talked about sleep before, and you're very switched on with how you manage your sleep. But this is also about how we do it for our team as well. And, there's a number of people that have sort of challenged me over the years on this. And Margaret Thatcher was a classic, she challenged me, but she was a classic person of, 2, 3 hours sleep a night sort of person. And yet, really, if given that every species on the planet has some form of sleep, if sleep isn't important, it's nature's greatest mistake. Even dolphins have half their brain sleeping at a time, so that the other half keeps them swimming through the water. But it really is, evolutionary. It would be completely stupid for, if you think about it in caveman times, for a creature, a person that is vulnerable to being eaten, to suddenly just turn off their turn off all of their sort of senses and go to sleep, because it just leaves them they're obviously not productive, and they're not and they're vulnerable to attack. So if sleep wasn't important, we would have evolved our way out of sleep. But it clearly is important because, like I said, if you don't have sleep for long enough, then you will die, and it's not actually that long. So there are 4 stages of sleep. And obviously, so there's the falling asleep stage, which is kind of that light sleep stage. Then you go into sort of stage 2, which is where the heart rate slows and the body temperature drops. You then go into your deep sleep phase, which is where the muscles and tissues repair. And then finally, you go into this REM sleep, which is rapid, it stands for rapid eye movement. And this is where the body is kind of pretty much paralyzed, and that's where your dreams begin. And it's useful to understand this cycle because it also typically happens in 90-minute bursts. And so therefore, actually sleeping in 90-minute cycles is quite an important principle that we can come back to later on. Um, and so I wanted to start really by saying, why is it so important? Why is it so important that we get really good quality and quantity of sleep? And the first one is that sleep deprivation is one of the leading indicators in Alzheimer's. And so those people that say, oh yeah, I tend to only sleep 3 or 4 hours a night, I only need that, they might feel like they need that, but they are the highest risk of Alzheimer's. And so sleep definitely has a huge impact on that. And that's one of the 5 biggest killers of human beings. Um, it also has a huge impact on some of the cancers. So some cancers are linked to people that have had long-term sleep disruption. It definitely increases the risk of some cancers. It also actually makes you less attractive. So this is a photo of the same person, one that is sleep deprived and one that isn't. And you can probably work out which one is the sleep deprived one, but one is slightly less attractive than the other uh, because of that. Uh, Another reason that sleep is so important is it actually has a huge impact on our hormone levels. So, for example, in men, testosterone levels tend to drop if you're not getting sufficient sleep. So it has a huge impact, and testosterone has a huge impact on your health, and that's just one of the hormones that it impacts. 1 in 5 crashes are apparently linked to people are tired. So that results in about 300 deaths a year. So 300 people die as a result of being tired at the wheel. And in terms of businesses, it costs a global economy $411 billion because of people that are tired. So apparently a nurse is 168% more likely to crash on their way home after a long shift as well. So you think like people are much more likely to have sick days. They are much more likely to get ill. They're much more likely to make mistakes. And that's why this is really important that you kind of help your team in this area as well as getting your sleep right. It's one of the reasons why Google actually introduced sleep pods so that they could make sure that their employees could grab a nap if they needed to. Um, yeah, and in terms of how good they are at work, when you're tired, you tend to choose less challenging problems. You come up with fewer creative solutions. When they tend to slack off more. Obviously, much less likely to work late. They're actually also much more likely to falsify results or kind of work kind of basically lie, I suppose, would be another way of putting it. And when the leader is underslept, they are less charismatic. Now, I'm hoping that this isn't apparent, but I actually was in London until late last night. So I'm doing this presentation having got to bed at about 1 o'clock this morning, which is a very, very late night for me. So if I am slightly less charismatic with my presentation, we can blame the fact that I had a lack of sleep last night. And apparently, the underslept take 11 more sick days than those people that sleep well, and their healthcare costs rise by about 80% for the businesses that they employ, as if assuming they're picking up those healthcare costs. And it also has a really interesting impact in long-term endurance sport. So one of the guys I've interviewed on the Business of Endurance podcast is a guy called Ian Adamson, and he used to race these. I'm going to ask people, could we just mute? I'm just going to mute a few people here. Oh, that's okay. That's great. So when I interviewed Ian Adamson, he goes off and races these incredible multi-day events. So an example is a race called the God Zone, which goes across New Zealand. You're running, kayaking, cycling, kind of scrambling, all sorts, and it's as a team. And he tells this story of where they were leading the race, but only by about an hour. And he said that they needed to stop for sleep because it was a multi-day race. And his team said, no, 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 we're not stopping for sleep. And in the end, he agreed with them that they would have 10 minutes sleep. He said he would set his alarm for 10 minutes. He didn't, and he let them sleep for 8 hours. So they gave up. They ended up, going from an hour ahead of their competition, going back into second, because they took 8 hours sleep. They actually ended up winning that race by a whole day because the sleep that they got allowed them to way out, easily outcompete the team that was behind them that didn't sleep as much. And interestingly, it was Ian that pointed out something that gets talked about in the Best Sleep book, which is Why We Sleep, which I'll come back to later on. But that is the most interesting sleep experiment is daylight saving. So once a year we lose an hour's sleep, and once a year we gain an hour's sleep. So the morning after the night where we lost an hour's sleep, all cause mortality goes up by a significant percentage. I haven't got with me what the percentage is. And equally, the morning after the night where we gain an extra hour's sleep, all cause mortality drops by a significant, statistically significant percentage. So that's car crashes, that's heart attacks, that's suicide, that all cause mortality increases the day after you lose an hour's sleep and reduces the day after you gain an hour's sleep. Which, when you see that, you think, well, why on earth are we still changing the clocks at all? Because it seems ludicrous. But it also really highlights how important just 1 hour's sleep at cost is to us in our in our productivity and in our health. Also, if you're trying to lose weight, then a lack of sleep really will hinder you, because the more tired you get, the more you're likely to, your body starts to crave sugar, and you make bad food choices, and it's much more difficult to lose weight if you're not sleeping well. So if you're trying to lose weight, the first thing you can do is improve your sleep. And also, for those people that are trying to learn, whether that's your children at school, whether that's you guys trying to learn stuff within your business, sleep has a huge factor of, particularly the REM sleep, in how you make your memories and how you learn. So a reduction in sleep quality and particularly a reduction in REM sleep will reduce your ability to learn and memorize what you have taken on board that day. And also, it's a huge factor in our mental health. So people not sleeping well have lower moods, they have higher stress levels, poorer mental health. There's quite a lot of connection between sleep disorders and psychiatric conditions as well. So basically, the summary is that it impacts a lack of sleep impacts pretty much every area of our life: our health, our happiness, our physical and mental well-being, our productivity, and our business's productivity. And interestingly, so I've seen Stephen Bartlett speak twice in the last couple of years, and on both occasions he's been asked, what's the biggest factor that what's the single biggest takeaway that you've had from all of those amazing interviews with all of the world's best people? Uh, and on both occasions, the answer has been the importance of sleep. That is the outcome of all of those. Speaking to the world's best, that's the single takeaway that he gets. So if we're going to start thinking about how we actually change this and how we improve our sleep, what do we need to do to get better sleep, both in terms of quality and quantity? Well, the first thing to do is to actually make sure that you're sleeping in a cool environment. A cooler room is really important, uh, particularly as in the middle of the night. So if you can keep your room cool, then that will mean that you have a far better chance of sleeping well. Whether that's the window open, whether that's the aircon on, or if you're struggling, I like to sleep very cool, whereas Carol doesn't like to sleep as cool as I do. So one of the things that I keep threatening that I'm going to buy, I haven't bought one yet, but the people I know that have got one absolutely love them, and that is the 8 Sleep. I'm not sure whether you call it a mattress. It's really a blanket that sits over your mattress, but it allows you to moderate the temperature of your room. At this time of year, this seems like a no-brainer when you're kind of waking up too hot, because it's kind of stiflingly warm on some summer days, isn't it? But the great thing about this is you can have different temperatures on different sides of the bed. So if one of you likes to sleep cooler than the other, you can facilitate that. I believe I'm right in also saying that you can have it so that it gradually warms up, so that it will warm you, it wakes you up through temperature, so you can set an alarm through the temperature. And also, I think I'm right in saying the Ultra will link into a sleep tracker like an Aura Ring, which I'll come back to. And so therefore, what that can do is it knows where you're at in terms of your sleep cycle, and it can alter the temperature based on that, which I find incredible. Like I said, I haven't got one of these. I keep threatening to buy one. I did buy a cooling blankets secondhand, but it was faulty, so I sent it back and I've never reinitiated it. Mainly because that one flooded my bedroom because it had a water tank and that tank would split and it flooded my bedroom. But anyway, that's a different story. But these, I think, from everyone I know that's got one, they absolutely rave about it, and the quality of the quality gain in your sleep is incredible. One of the things that it is also one of the best ways of improving your sleep quality is to have the same sleep schedule and routine every night. I was joking with Devi, who runs the Hub and Spoke Cafe this morning. It's like, when I was a kid, my bedtime was 9:30, and I kind of dreamt of a future where I could determine my bedtime and what time I wanted to go to bed. And now it turns out that my ideal bedtime is 9:30. So my daughters take the mickey out of the fact that I go to bed before they do. But actually, it's really brilliant to have that same sleep routine. So for me, I want to be going to sleep by 10 o'clock, waking up at 6 o'clock. So therefore, that gives me my 8 hours. And I think so. My iPhone now has a bedtime alarm. It tells me, I think it's probably 45 minutes before my bedtime. So instead of having I still have an alarm to wake me up, although I typically wake up at 6 without it. But having an alarm to tell you the time to go to bed is actually really powerful, and it's that reminder to switch off as well, which is the next really key thing for improving sleep quality. So avoiding any blue light, so particularly laptop screens, phones, iPads, etc. If avoiding blue light 90 minutes before bed is really important, because the blue light suppresses melatonin, which is the hormone that allows you to drop off to sleep. And so therefore, if you're going to read at bedtime, read a physical book, not an iPad. If you have to look at your phone, there's low light settings that you can trigger on it so that it automatically goes into kind of less blue light settings. And the other thing that ties in with this is it's really powerful in those 90 minutes to gradually, to get rid of sort of more bright lights. So have dimmer lights, whether you're reading, whether you're watching TV, or whatever it is. Have the lights much on a much dimmer setting, because that way you're programming your body to that it's getting ready to go to sleep, and it'll start that melatonin production. Two of the key factors in damaging the quality of your sleep are caffeine and alcohol. Caffeine has a 6-hour half-life, so it takes 6 hours for the caffeine to drop by 50%, another 6 hours to drop down to 25%, another 6 hours to drop down to 12.5%. So really, you want to stop having caffeine. With caffeine, it kind of depends on whether you process it quickly and how tolerant you are to caffeine. But general advice is that you want to stop having caffeine by lunchtime. So most days I'll switch to decaffeinated coffee from lunchtime onwards. But certainly 2 o'clock would be my absolute hard stop for having any caffeine. Alcohol, again, it totally wrecks your sleep quality. A hangover is actually predominantly sleep deprivation as opposed to the impact of the alcohol on the system. So therefore, really, I found one of the best, having tracked my sleep, one of the best ways that I can improve sleep. Obviously, the first way is to drink less, clearly, but also to have a window between stopping drinking and when you go to sleep to kind of allow your body to process some of that. That really helps. So I will typically try and stop drinking at least an hour before I plan to go to sleep to give that sleep quality a better chance. Interestingly, by tracking my sleep, what I also know now is that certain white wines are way worse for my sleep, and beer is much worse for my sleep than, say, red wine. So So that is also worth kind of, because that will clearly be different for different people. But yeah, so kind of stopping drinking alcohol as or earlier, or drinking less, and stopping drinking caffeine from sort of lunchtime onwards are two of the best ways to improve your sweet sleep quality and quantity. One of the best ways, another great way to improve your ability to go to sleep and your sleep quality is regular exercise, but even better if that regular exercise is morning exercise, because often evening exercise, which boosts your endorphins, can actually stop you going to sleep. So morning exercise, getting out in the early morning sun is really powerful, and is actually a brilliant way to beat jet lag. So, for example, if you're flying west, so if I'm flying to the US, when I get there, I always go for a walk or a run because it's a way of me telling my body, hang on, it's still daylight. So exercise is a fantastic way of boosting your sleep. And of course, if you get great exercise, like Tina said, she went for a good swim this morning, as did I. Then that means that you're tired by the evening, which means you're much more likely to fall straight to sleep. And yeah, that exposure to natural light, really increasing that daylight exposure, especially in the morning, is a really powerful way to do that. And it will kind of help you, like I said, with jet lag. One of the other tools that I use to help me with jet lag is melatonin. So you can't buy melatonin over the counter in the UK. You can in the US. You can buy it from the US and ship it to the UK. And also, if you're in the US, you can just buy it. So I don't think using sleep tablets typically is a good plan. Melatonin, I think, is from what I hear, having interviewed sleep specialists, melatonin is the best if you're going to use anything, because it's essentially it's the hormone your body is producing. So it's not a lot of the sleep medicines are your eyes are closed, but you're not actually getting sleep quality. Whereas melatonin is about triggering the falling asleep. So if you're struggling to fall asleep, whether that's because you're suffering from insomnia or whether that's because you're jet lagged, melatonin is a great way of getting you off to sleep. Actually, the problem with melatonin is that you have fast release melatonin or slow release melatonin. So fast release will help you get to sleep, but then you might wake up. Slow release will help you stay asleep. So the best supplements that I've found in the US actually have a combination of those two. You don't need a lot. So I'll use on a plane where I'm trying to go to sleep early, like on the way home from the US, I'll have a melatonin tablet to allow me to fall asleep early, but with that slow release melatonin in there as well, so I stay asleep. And when you're going out west, it's just a question of going out for a run or exercise in the daylight when you first get there. So melatonin is a useful tool. One of the other things that's really important is making sure you're sleeping in complete darkness. So like turning off, if you've got a TV in your room, turning the TV off so there's no standby light, just getting rid of as much light as possible, blackout curtains, any other sort of electronic light sources, because it also suppresses the production of melatonin. I personally sleep in a sleep mask, and the one that I like the best is the Manta sleep mask. It just takes any pressure off your eyes. When I sleep with eye masks, the sort that you get given in on flights, I tend to end up waking up without wearing them, which means that then the morning light, even through decent blackout curtains, is potentially waking me up. So this is the sleep mask that I prefer. One of the other ways to boost sleep, particularly if you are prone to snoring, or if your partner is prone to snoring, is to make sure that you're breathing through your nose. It's really important for a whole load of health reasons. If you want to find out more about that, then the best book to read is Breath by uh, James Nestor, I think, or David Nestor, one or the other. Um, but it's really important for so many different health reasons what that we breathe through our nose. But at nighttime, particularly if you sleep on your back, you are prone to sleep, yeah, breathing through your mouth. So one of the other things that Carol and I do is we use these. We tape our mouth to ensure that we are breathing through our nose. There is a brand which I meant to put down here. It is this particular image, and I'm just going to have to look up what that brand was so I can share that with you. I think it's called Rev. Hang on. Because what you don't want, respire, that's it. What you don't want is mouth tape. Like you can use like micropore tape, but certainly some of the tapes you just don't want anything that's got chemical in it that's going to, you know, have other long-term health benefit or impacts. So these Respire ones are really good. They tape the mouth well, but and it might take you a few nights to get used to it. But once you do, I think you sleep a whole lot better. Carol, I don't use it, but Carol also finds that Respire do a nose strip. She finds that that really helps her sleep, particularly because that allows her to sleep on the other side. So when she sleeps on her left side, she can breathe through her nose, but when without the nose strip, when she sleeps on her right side, she ends up trying to breathe through her mouth. So those nose strips are really have really helped improve her sleep quality. There are certain foods that will also boost your sleep quality. So I think there's 6 foods that are really kind of put out there as a boost to your sleep. They are kiwi, tart cherries, malted milk, fatty fish, nuts, and rice. That is probably more than 6, isn't? Oh no, no, I think that is 6. Um, so those foods can help you boost your sleep. Uh, and then also, I've talked about it before, but there's definitely a role for having a nap during the day. So today, I will go and have a nap after lunch. The best time to have a nap is after lunch because that's when your body goes into that rest period that we've talked about in that's kind of that lull after early afternoon, but also because your food is digesting, it's much easier to sort of drop off them. 10 to 20 minutes is the ideal amount. If you go beyond about 20 minutes, you find that you start getting into deep sleep, and that's where you wake up with a lot of lethargy. But it's a really great way. You think about it. Adenosine is the kind of what the hormone that builds up in our body and kind of makes us tired and allows us to and allows us to then go to sleep. So it's like this. It's like just taking the pressure off. It releases, having a nap just releases the pressure. And it means that, yes, it hasn't replaced a huge amount of sleep, but it stops you feeling so tired, which is actually really, it's shown to have a lot of benefits. And try and avoid napping after 3 because then it potentially will affect your sleep at night time. Also, apparently, the advice is if you're suffering from insomnia, you shouldn't nap because that will also mean that you're less likely to go to sleep then in the evening. One of the other ways that you can boost your sleep is to manage stress, managing anxiety, particularly stress before sleep is is really powerful. Obviously, that's a whole different subject, but we have a learning lunch called the Stress Shield, which you could go through to help you manage stress better. Certainly, one of the things that frustrates me is sometimes, when you wake up in the middle of the night and your brain immediately throws whatever bad news it can at you, doesn't it? And there's a reason that it does that. If you read The Chimp Paradox by Dr. Steve Peters, and the reason that that happens is because the chimp brain is the first part of the brain to wake up. So if you've had a bad day at work and you wake up in the middle of the night, guess what? The first thing that gets thrown into your brain is, oh God, that thing that happened at work today is, you're going to be and then you're lying there going, well, why am I thinking of that now? So one of the pieces of advice that Steve Peters gives you is tell the chimp brain to shut up. Literally, if in your head you tell the chimp brain to shut up, then you're engaging your human brain, which is your logical brain, and therefore you're overriding the chimp brain. But there's some other great advice that I've picked up on podcasts over the years as to how you can get back to sleep. One is to count a cannon firing random numbers. So what you're trying to do when you're trying to fall asleep is trying to engage the brain enough to keep it away from other things like what your chimp brain's trying to throw in, but not sufficient that it actually stimulates thoughts. You're trying to create boring thoughts. So I visualize a cannon firing numbers out into the sky. So that random number up to between 1 and 100 is enough mental stimulation to keep your brain engaged, but boring enough that it's not overstimulated. Another piece of a strategy for falling back to sleep or falling asleep in the first place is to go for a mental walk. So a walk on a route that you know. So for example, I will sometimes do that through the golf course I'm a member of. I know that walk really well, and you kind of typically get bored of it mentally. And then a final strategy is, which I really like, is if you've got kind of lots of things being thrown at you by your chimp brain, then you can literally visualize a table where you've got different kind of personas that help you in different areas. So you might imagine, Tony Robbins sitting at this table as your kind of health and well-being guru, and you might have uh, your one of your business partners sitting at the table at that kind of imaginary leadership table as the business person. And you might have your financial advisor there as finances. And then literally you can just have a conversation going, look, okay, so what are we going to do about this tomorrow or next week? And basically you're freeing yourself up to go, okay, so I'm going to mentally park that. I'm going to contact that person. I'm going to speak to this person. I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it at that point. And then you can park it and go, right, is that everything we need to worry about? Yes. If you want to find out more about that strategy, I think it was a strategy that was talked about by Naval Ravikant, who was, I think, interviewed on Diary CEO. I might be wrong with that, it's that I'm sure that advice came from him, and I found that to be really powerful when there's a lot going on. But one of the things to improve your sleep is as with anything, is what measured matters. What you measure gets done, and it brings awareness. So there's lots of different ways that you can measure your sleep. Obviously, there's an Apple Watch or a Garmin. They're probably more accurate now. I found historically that the Garmin watch really wasn't that accurate. It knew if I'd got up in the middle of the night for a wee, but equally it didn't know that I'd woken up, rolled over, and gone to sleep, even though I was aware that that had been the case. Whoop band is good if you want to wear a band that sort of sorts out sleep, exercise, kind of everything. If you already wear something like a Garmin or an Apple Watch during the day for your exercise, then I think the best solution is the Aura Ring. The Aura Ring, in research that was done 2 or 3 years ago, or no, probably 2 years ago by Dave Asprey, that does a lot of research in this stuff. The Aura Ring was the most accurate in terms of sleep score. I don't know if it still works, but that QR code should give you a $50 discount off an Aura Ring if you decided you wanted it. That link may also still do the same thing. If it doesn't, let me know and I'll put it in the WhatsApp group. But the Aura Ring, for me, I could track my sleep on a Garmin, but it's a pretty chunky watch, and if I roll over and whack Carol in the face with that, I'll soon find out about it. So the Aura Ring is just a far less invasive way of managing my sleep. There is also there are a number of sleep trackers apps that you can have on your phone. I prefer not to use those because I really want my phone away from me at night time. And but if you do use them, make sure they're one that will work with the phone being on airplane mode, because if you're having your phone near you at night, you definitely should have it on airplane mode with all the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and everything else like that turned off. But I think the great thing about having something like an Aura Ring or whatever device it is that you use is it just that awareness will just make sure that you spot patterns. Like, for example, actually, I didn't talk about it, but one of the patterns that I spotted was the later I ate, the lower my sleep quality. So I know I'm much better eating my dinner at about 6 o'clock because that doesn't impact my sleep quality. If I eat at 8, 9 o'clock, then it really does impact that. That's how I spotted that certain alcohols were worse for my sleep than others. And that just giving it an hour between stopping drinking and sleeping really has quite a significant improvement on the sleep score. But it's also that kind of awareness of, hang on, what is going right here, what's not going right, or why didn't I sleep well last night? Or maybe I shouldn't have had that coffee at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Those sorts of things. So it really does. That awareness really does help you. And for me, the Aura Ring is the best way of doing that. If you want to find out more about sleep, there's a few resources here for you. Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker is definitely the best sleep book I have read. He's also been interviewed on Diary of a CEO, which is really worth listening to. So, like, just brilliant. He was one of the speakers at Abundance 360 this year, and just like he's the go-to man on sleep, basically. Um, if you're kind of struggling to get back to sleep, I think either way, the Chimp Paradox is worth reading. It's in terms of helping you manage your mind better. And then the best episode of, well, Business of Endurance now, it was the Triathlon podcast when we interviewed her, is Dr. Charlotte Edelston. So she is a sleep scientist, but she's also an ultra runner herself, and she does a lot of studies on sleep in ultra runners. So she's a fascinating lady, and so I would suggest that you check out that episode.